Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. Thank you to everyone who has joined the meeting. Um, uh, Let me see. I have I have 1 o'clock on my calendar, my clock. So I will go ahead and start the meeting. Uh, as advertised. It said it starts at 1, so let's get started. And some people are on vacation and joining us from their vacation, so we don't want to hold them up.
That's right. We appreciate it.
We appreciate those folks who are pausing their vacation to join us. So as I said, thank you for joining us. This is the Maricopa County Branch NAACP's monthly membership meeting. The membership meeting is our way of providing updates uh, to everyone about the activities that we are engaged in. And it's the membership's opportunity to know what we're doing and to engage in activities of the NAACP as they choose to. So as far as updates, most importantly, let me remind everyone that we, the Maricopa County branch, for the last 4 or 5 years, we email updates on a weekly basis about what the branch is engaged in, as well as announcements. We send that out to our members and the community at large. And most of you on the call already, I believe, understand how to access our weekly updates. I'm Dr. Karen Harden, president of the Maricopa County branch, starting my 7th year as the president. Let me see. I would like to acknowledge Councilwoman Keisha Hodge, and thank you for joining us today. And we really appreciate all of the support that you've given us. So, and with that, let me say another current update, because the purpose of the monthly meetings is to give updates about what we're doing. Six delegates from our branch joined several other members from the Arizona State Conference. I believe there were about 40. I don't know if they were all delegates, but I'll say 40 NAACP members from the state of Arizona that attended the national convention. Each branch has a number of designated delegates who vote on the resolutions that are presented by the national NAACP. From our branch, we had 6, and the very important message, the message coming out of the national convention was that if we're not all in, we will be all out. So we have to be all in with this election cycle, or we will all be out of the democratic process as we know it. So my update coming out of the national convention is a call to action for us to reach out to the folks who may not see a need to vote, so that we can build coalitions so that we are all in for this voting cycle. Another update is that coming out of the convention, there was information about the implication of policies of Project 2025. So we need to make sure that we're educating people or urging them to educate themselves about the policy implications of Project 2025. Also, today's meeting, we wanted to just discuss or talk about the Department of Justice, their report on the Phoenix Police Department. Our third vice president, Princess Lucas Wilson, will facilitate that conversation. And let me give you a little information about the credentials of our third vice president. Princess Lucas Wilson is an educator and retired public policy manager. Ms. Lucas Wilson holds a master's degree in social work and a certification in public management. She has worked as a counselor, a practitioner, manager, and administrator in both the public and private sector. Ms. Wilson has also served as a professor and instructor at the college and university level, where she has taught numerous courses in social work, public policy, advocacy, community practice, counseling, and victimology. Early in her career, Ms. Lucas Wilson developed an interest in public policy as a social work practitioner. She became keenly aware that public policy had a major role in determining the type of help families and individuals could receive, as well as the ways in which social systems influenced all of our lives. She discovered that many of our civil liberties and rights are heavily influenced by who's in elected public office. Her work continues in this area. Because of this perspective, Ms. Lucas Wilson views social justice concerns through a holistic lens of social justice and civil rights. Further, she sees voter suppression inextricably tied to impediments to criminal justice reform. Currently, Ms. Lucas Wilson serves as the third vice president and chair of the Public Safety Law Enforcement Committee for the Maricopa County branch of the NAACP. In her role with the NAACP, Ms. Lucas Wilson, whenever possible, conducts quarterly forums on policing with several of the police departments, reviews law enforcement policies, hosts quarterly community book club meetings related to justice reforms, and works collaboratively with community partners on a wide range of justice and education issues. Ms. Lucas Wilson grew up in Phoenix, Arizona, and has had close-up look at the problems affecting our communities. Her criminal justice experiences from a personal level involves family members have been shot, beaten, and trapped in a cycle of incarceration. Her family were subjected to the Jim Crow laws and harassment by law enforcement. To date, she has experienced at least 20 traffic stops by local police officers, mostly due to the make and model of the car she was driving. On a professional level, she was a social work practitioner and counselor. She worked to unite families with those who were incarcerated and the formerly incarcerated. She served as a practitioner for youth in the juvenile justice system who were duly adjudicated, dependent and delinquent as determined by the court. She licensed and certified families for adoption with prior offenses. She was a counselor for individuals with substance use issues, which also led to working with the criminal justice system to advocate for clients in recovery. She managed programs for children aging out of foster care, many with juvenile offenses. She supervised programs for people with developmental disabilities, some who were jailed unjustly due to their cognitive disabilities, as well as she served as executive director of a nonprofit that was responsible for several community programs, including restoring voting rights for the formerly incarcerated. So as you see, she is well positioned, extremely positioned to serve as our Public Safety Law Enforcement Committee Chair. And at this time, I will turn the meeting over to our third Vice President, Mrs. Princess Lucas Wilson, to provide the format for our discussion and to facilitate the discussion. Thank you very much, Ms. Lucas Wilson, for all you do to support the NAACP, because we are all in to make sure that we're not all out of this democratic process.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. And thank you so much, Dr. Harden, for that introduction. Really appreciate it. And I do want to start by introducing some of our committee members that serve on the Public Safety Law Enforcement Committee. We have Pressy Moore. Pressy is an educator, a librarian, and she transported children in foster care. And we know that many families in foster care come in contact with the criminal justice system. So she did that, and she volunteers at our office. So she has an opportunity to hear the community needs when she volunteers. Garen Bond is another member of our committee. He is an executive committee member and a retired police officer. So he will present information on the implications of the DOJ report. And Pressy will present the findings of the report. Carla Boatner is another member of our committee, and she has professional experience in the court system. She is retired. She could not be here today. And Princeton Wilson, who is an attorney with the Public Defender's Office. So those are the members of our committee. And we are so grateful and thankful that they're willing to serve in that capacity. Just to share with you, the Phoenix Police Department did receive an invitation to be a part of this discussion. And I was told at the time that they were not available. So if you want to get a perspective, maybe on their response, if you have not already looked up some documents, etc., there's a YouTube video, believe it was posted on July 3rd, that is very comprehensive in terms of how they view the DOJ report. So that video will give you their perspective at this time. So the purpose of the meeting, Dr. Harden did mention that at the National Convention, the theme was all in, so that we will not be all out. And in that particular theme, carrying it all locally, we want to involve the community in bringing forth solutions or ideas for reform related to the DOJ report. And the reason for doing that is communities, just in my practice and when I've taught classes, the evidence-based models show that communities are better at resolving their own issues. They have the best ideas. So that's why we're approaching this DOJ report discussion this way. And again, to bring you all in so we won't be all out. In terms of police departments working with communities, the recent unfortunate murder of Sonia Massey in Springfield, Illinois. I don't know if y'all are familiar with that, but she had called the police department for help and ended up getting shot in the face. Ben Crump is representing her. And I bring that up because NOBLE, the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement, they just released a statement, and the statement is very powerful, and their intent is to work with the community. So we can work together to resolve issues, to move things forward. It won't happen overnight, but I thought I would share that with you in terms of maybe some ideas or suggestions you might have for us locally. So we will have Pressy Moore present the findings and the implications will be by Garen Bond. And I will read the summary analysis submitted by Princeton Wilson. And then we will move on. And before we start, just one more point. The DOJ did acknowledge that speaking with many officers, that they did experience speaking with officers that were committed to serving the community with thoughtfulness and respect. So it's important to remember that piece as we talk about some of the findings. So with that, Pressy, are you on the line? Are you ready?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I'm so sorry. I apologize. I cannot get my camera on.
Okay.
I'm
Well,
on.
I'll verify that is you. I recognize your voice.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you. Again, and thank you so much for including me. But yes, I'd like to share some of the findings with you of the from this DOJ report. The Department of Justice has reasonable cause to believe that the City of Phoenix and the Phoenix Police Department engage in a pattern or practice of conduct that deprives people of their rights under the Constitution and the federal law. Some of the findings include the Phoenix Police Department uses excessive force, including unjustified deadly force and other types of force. Phoenix PD and the city unlawfully detain, cite, and arrest those experiencing homelessness and unlawfully dispose of their belongings. Phoenix Police Department discriminates against Black, Hispanic, and Native American people when enforcing the law. The Phoenix Police Department violates the rights of people engaged in protected speech and expression. Also, the Phoenix Police Department and the city discriminate against people with behavioral health disabilities when dispatching calls for assistance and responding to people in crisis, as is the latest story that we heard with Ms. Massey in Illinois. Also, the investigation raised serious concerns about Phoenix Police Department's treatment of children and the lasting impact aggressive police encounters have on their well-being. And as a former teacher, we see it all the time in the classrooms. When I very first started teaching in the late 80s, police officers were our friends. Now we have 6 and 7-year-olds who are literally afraid of police. And when we think of the policemen, the firemen, we still think of those as community, community laborers or community jobs. And the kids should, want to be a fireman, want to be a policeman. But here in my last, 5 or 10 years, students are afraid of police. It's not that favorable, occupation anymore. So I wanted to share some of those findings with you guys.
Okay, thank you so much, Pressy. And you've had the opportunity to see how over-policing may be sometimes connected to resource officers, how it affects our students and our young people. So thank you so much. Next, we have Garen Bond, who will present the implications of the DOJ report.
First of all, thank you for inviting me to be a part of this discussion. And I think it is a wonderful thing that we're talking about. Before I even start, I want to make sure that I expose my bias. I was a Phoenix police officer and a Phoenix police sergeant. I spent like 16 years in the police department, most of which I was a sergeant in the PD. Most of the time that I worked in the police department, I worked in the South Zone. So it was heavily Hispanic and Black areas that I worked in. So a lot of the findings I definitely understand, but I think that there's a problem with the way that the DOJ is presenting it. Now I'm going to talk about the implications, but I'm going to make sure that I expose what I think is a bias already.
Mm-hmm.
One of the biases is they talk about the things that have happened and police officers that did misconduct, but there's no mention of if any of those officers were disciplined or if the department was already aware of that problem and dealing with it. Now, there's a bunch of examples that they use where supervisors were involved and supervisors were part of the misconduct. That is important to understand because that talks about the culture that's going on with the police department. Okay, that being set aside, the implications I think of this report are profound. What they're saying is, and 37% of the people that they arrested that they tracked arrests were homeless people. Now, homeless in Phoenix only represents about 1% of the population, but 37% of these arrests were involving homeless people. So this comprehensive report is not just going to deal with Black or Hispanic people, but it's across the board, and it's going to deal with mostly the areas that are over-policed. And I agree, over-policed. Now, over-policed is a relative term because if you're in an area where there's lots of crime, you want to see the police. But if you're in an area where there's not a lot of crime, you're not going to want to see the police all the time just because of the feeling. And that perception of the police being your friend definitely depends on what part and what social economic structure you're coming from. If you're at a higher social economic structure, the police are your friend. They will be your friend. The firemen are your friend. If you're the lower social economic structure, you can see them as the enemy. I understand that. But the implications of this report are profound. One of the things that I found that I think is important is they're asking for more reporting, more data, more reporting of the incidents that occur that are going to result in findings. And they even correctly in the report said that the reporting is lacking, that there's not enough data as far as where these incidents are coming from and how it's being worked with. But the fact that the police department is resisting being part of a consent decree to have it being monitored from the outside is, I think, an implication of the problem. Because for years, I've seen signs that say, how do you call the police on the police? And if you're living in a place, in a structure where the police can do misconduct and is condoned by the police department, who do you call? Well, that's supposed to be the federal government. That's supposed to be the people that are writing this report. They're the people that are supposed to be implementing and dealing with the reforms. Now, the reforms that they asked, and I think on this report, it starts at page 119 is when they start talking about what they think some of the things should happen so that they can improve the relationship with the police. Most of them I agree with 100%, but there are some problems with the implications of what they're trying to say. Part of what they're saying is that all levels of the police department have an issue with treating people with respect and constitutionally. I don't think that's the case. I think it's a case that it's area by area, supervisor by supervisor, shift by shift. There is a cultural problem that has to be addressed. And that cultural problem starts at the top going down. It's not a bottom going up, it's from the top going down. If you see your supervisor telling you to shoot somebody that's already down, asking you to use non-lethal force on somebody who's already not resisting, it's very difficult for that same supervisor to then discipline his people for doing the same misconduct that they just shown. That is a problem. Now, that's one of the things that implications of this report is they're asking them to do something, but they're not asking it to be done at the highest levels. We got to have the assistant chiefs that are responsible for patrol, whether it's south or north, the supervisors that are responsible for the specialty details that advocate for using force when there is no resistance available just because of the history of resistance. And that is an issue all over the country. If they know that they're looking for somebody that may have already resisted arrest, they're much more likely to use excessive force against somebody who has not even shown any signs of resistance. That's a area where even in the report, they talked about in training, where in training, they had supervisors condoning excessive force when no force was necessary to actually resolve an issue. One of the issues, the implications of what they've addressed was an understanding of this idea of de-escalation. Prior to 2022, police officers believed that any use of force was de-escalation. The definition of de-escalation has to be really, really clear, not just to patrol officers, but to their supervisors as well. When a supervisor can administer and say, okay, it's okay for you to detain somebody, it's okay for you to arrest them and arrest them for resisting arrest when a person has committed no crime, just because you want to know who they are to see if they can do a search warrant, basic violation of their constitutional rights. And that's basic. Okay. But again, that's one of those issues that has to go from the top down. So implications of this report, okay, I think that's enough for me.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you for all those insights. And I know with this particular topic, it can be sensitive, triggering. It can bring up all sorts of thoughts. So I appreciate your insight. It's important to hear all of those particulars about how departments operate, and your particular experience locally is very much appreciated. Next, I'll read the DOJ summary analysis submitted by Princeton Wilson, and he submitted this summary as a NAACP member. The Department of Justice findings were not surprising, but they were disappointing. The findings related to excessive uses of force against minorities and mistreatment of the homeless were expected. However, the police department's violations of rights of people engaged in free speech and expression is especially concerning. According to the report, the Phoenix Police Department engaged in unconstitutional practices to suppress critical speech. As an NAACP member, this is troubling because the Phoenix Police Department used indiscriminate force against protesters, falsified allegations to arrest protest leaders, and prevented people from lawfully recording police conduct. The NAACP relies on the ability to speak critically of those in power to effect change. So the fact that the Phoenix Police Department falsifies allegations against protesters highlights the NAACP's particular role in protecting the First Amendment rights to speak truth to power. The other problems mentioned in the investigation will persist if the Phoenix Police Department continues to criminalize critical speech. So, while the entire report was distressing, this particular finding was especially troubling. So that's from his perspective as a NAACP member, and he's also been president of the ASU chapters and done other work with our local branch. So that's a very, very brief overview. So we've had the findings, implications, etc. And now we will move to a Q&A session. And in framing any suggestions, ideas you may have, I'd like to just share a couple of questions submitted by another one of our committee members, Carla Boatner. The first one is, where do the city and Phoenix PD go from here? And the second one is, how does Phoenix PD plan to address the deficient data collection process related to discriminatory policing outlined in the report? So as you submit your ideas or suggestions, That's a couple of questions you can consider to frame whatever you like to put forth. And, based on your experiences or what you've read or reviewed, anything like that, any suggestions, in keeping with the all-in theme and the fact that organizations like Noble, which one of the founding members is a Phoenix police officer, Officer Doge Nelson. That particular organization continues to promote community policing, et cetera. So we do have organizations, departments that want to work with the community. So let's get started on our Q&A. And we've asked Councilwoman Keisha Hodge Washington to provide some closing remarks. So after our Q&A session, she will provide some closing remarks.
So, Ms. Lucas Wilson, may I suggest maybe if this is okay with you as a facilitator, we let Councilwoman Keisha Hodge go ahead and speak and share with us anything she likes, while other folks are maybe crafting their responses in the Q&A. Right now, there's nothing in the Q&A.
Okay.
So again, I'm going to reiterate what Ms. Lucas Wilson said. If you have solution-focused suggestions or recommendations, please put them in the Q&A, and we're watching the Q&A. And if that is okay, we can still keep, we appreciate Councilwoman Hodges' presence and also be here to help us if there are concerns in the Q&A.
I see a note from Councilwoman that's asking us to move forward with the Q&A.
Okay.
First.
Okay. The Q&A is open if anyone wants to put anything in there. And so while we're waiting for Q&A, I will just reiterate some of the information that I shared at the beginning of the call, because several people, I'm thank you for those of you that joined. And at the beginning of the call, we explained that the purpose of this session was informational. Also, we explained that the purpose of our monthly meetings is to give our members updates on activities that we're doing. We have provided weekly updates through our listserv for the last, I think, at least 4 years. So therefore, if you would like to be on our distribution list, you may email us at admin at the word NAACP Maricopa az.org. If you'd like to get on our weekly distribution update list, send us an email, admin at NAACP Maricopa az.org. I'm looking at the Q&A. Comments could need to go in the Q&A, not the chat. If you want to respond, it needs to go in the Q&A. As of right now, there is nothing in the Q&A.
And there's 3 in the chat. So can you
Q&A? They need to go.
I'm just going to ask people to move it over to the Q&A. Could you please move your questions or solutions from the chat to the Q&A? That's what I was going to say.
Responses, if you have questions, if you have recommendations, please submit them to the Q&A. There is a solution. This, I perceive it as a solution that says that I have requested, this comes from Shannon Hayes, I have requested that there be create a community police commission that is not connected with the city of Phoenix. And they have agreed to support our efforts to establish a commission. So that's I'm interpreting that as a solution. Another recommendation from Mr. Bond, who has extensive experience in the law enforcement area, says that there needs to be a much more aggressive recruiting efforts for minority and female officers, and especially supervisors. And while we're waiting for other any other recommendations, let me personally thank everyone who has taken time to join us. And like I said, we will do our membership updates every week. They come out electronically. We also have our membership meetings the fourth Saturday of each month at 1 p.m. It varies, either Zoom or in person. That information is sent out via our listserv. So Miss Lucas Wilson, those are the two recommendations that I see as of now in the Q&A. I don't know if you want to wait a little bit longer for more or move forward.
We probably should move forward. You know, I understand that, you know, thinking about solutions kind of right now might be where everyone's, you know, thoughts are. So I understand that, but with these types of meetings, in my experience, the more that the community can contribute, organizations have a role, but what creates change more effectively are community members, you know, outcries from community members, protests. I thought that that was one of the important things about what the DOJ summary analysis pointed out. If we can't speak out and criticize without being punished or targeted, change certainly won't happen. So just on that note, to encourage, you know, community members, whether you're in an organization or not, to be as diligent as you can in tracking what's going on with the community and tracking in terms of the power structure, you know, where there are opportunities for you to control who makes decisions that are in the best interest of you and your community. It takes all of us, and it always has. And also understanding that staying in this space, looking at injustice, violence, all of that is painful. So we all need breaks from it. But if we all do it, we can be I think we can move the needle along further. And I've just seen that happen, you know, throughout the country. So
Ms. Lucas Wilson, there are 3 more comments in the Q&A that I see right this minute.
Okay.
One, it's a question. Are there plans to develop improvement of officers and citizens' relations That's one, it's a question. A comment that says, Mr. Bond mentioned that often the aggressive behaviors of police is coming from supervisors. Why aren't supervisors held to some accountability to each other? The comment that the commission that we discussed a few minutes ago, the commission, the recommendation is that that commission be community ran. And maybe a recommendation is a special number to call the police on the police. A special call, and maybe it doesn't say this, but interject, definitely if it was anonymous, then, you know, maybe people would, if it was anonymous, people might be more reticent to call that number.
Mhm.
And I want to iterate what we just said earlier, is that it's incumbent on everyone, not, I don't believe any one person or any one organization, not any one organization can address these issues. I think that's a good recommendation, a special number to be able to give comments about your police interaction with the police officers. Maybe good, you know, positive relationships as well
Right.
as interactions that were concerning.
Right, right. I'd like to just add something just based on, you know, my efforts have been to try to understand what officers go through, you know, how the policies are applied, things like that, you know, in an effort to move toward reform. And this may or may not apply, but what I was told at one point in terms of officers intervening when they observe misconduct, that if with your partners, when you're out in the field, if you're in danger and you've reported one of them, or, you know, a couple of them, if you're in danger and you call for help, then help won't come. You're just out alone. And so I don't know if that addresses maybe why supervisors may not pursue certain complaints or misconduct. I don't know. I'm thinking, and just in general, in any organization, when you're a supervisor, if there's a shortage of officers, supervisors have to jump in. So I'm, you know, that's just a comment.
And here's another comment to add to the conversation, is that can there be more study on the cultural problems mentioned? And I think that was through Garen. Was that your findings when you talked about the findings? Or can there be more study on the cultural problems mentioned? Any thoughts on that?
I think 100% that would be very important. The culture of the department is actually what they're saying the problem is that it is actually acceptable to do certain practices because they've been taught. And in order to unteach those things, that there has to be a cultural shift. So that's why bringing more minorities, more women, into not just the ranks of officers, but in the supervisory ranks, because that changes the culture that is dealt with. And looking at the makeup of men and women and minorities in the department, we're severely underrepresented, and that's a problem.
Yes.
Speaking to, just this thought came through my mind when you talk about recruiting more females and maybe ethnic minorities into the ranks of the police. seems like I remember, is it POW, or how do you get females and minorities interested in becoming police officers? You know, the officer, it seems like there needs to be a community request for more officer-friendly type of activities that has to develop a culture that the police officers are your friends, right? And I think in all of the literature, one of the recommendations I think I've heard before is police officers living in the communities where they work. Yes, another question. Oh, okay, no, that was the same question. I was getting ready to read it again, that about the culture. Yeah. So, Ms. Lucas, we have like 14 minutes left.
Okay.
And don't know if you want to keep with the Q&A or segue over to the concluding statements, you know, just to give you let you know where our time is.
Okay. Okay. I think we should move to the closing remarks in just a few minutes. If you see some additional ideas, you know, please let me know.
Okay.
But this, you know, what we have so far are excellent ideas, and a community commission with community oversight. You know, that I can see how that can be very, very effective. And the comment about the culture of any organization, you know, in order to change that, it takes several steps. And we did have a program, those of us who grew up here, I think it was called ROMP, where people of color were recruited by the police department. And, you know, I know just in my lifetime, several people from our community became officers. So I don't know if it's possible to bring something like that back, but it has to be some incentive, additional incentives, I think, in today's climate, you know, for people to come forth. And that special number to call to report complaints, you know, I think that's excellent. So it's been some great suggestions and ideas given so far. So we can move on if you're ready, Councilwoman Hodge Washington.
I'm ready whenever you are. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you. I think we're ready. We didn't get any more ideas, did we, Dr. Harden?
Not at this point, no.
Okay. Yes, if you don't mind, Councilwoman, moving on.
Just one last comment that said the number that we talked about, having that number, making sure that that number is recorded and monitored for follow-up.
Oh, yes, yes. And that's a good way to collect data, because that's another area having deficient data. Great, great.
Well, I'll go ahead and give a couple closing comments. I want to say thank you again to the Dr. Harden and the third Vice President, Ms. Lucas Wilson, for hosting or for getting together this community forum. I do believe that the NAACP has been a prime, has always been on the forefront when it comes to these types of issues. So it's no surprise that you guys are here. Again, making sure the community is informed and engaged and know what's going on. Just a little bit of context for this. I can't really explain what the city is doing at this juncture, because as you may or may not have realized, when the report was issued, we were just on the verge of starting our summer break. So we have not made a formal conclusion on how we will proceed. For me, community feedback is important. Understanding how the community feels about the report, what are the suggestions that can be, what are the recommendations and policy changes going forward that can be made is very important to me. I definitely want to ensure that we are making the decision in the best interest of the entirety of our community. There's of course, with any process, there's going to be additional funding concerns, and we are weighing all of that and determining the best path forward. So, but I wanted to make sure, for me, it's very important. I'm like many of you, when I read the report, some of the instances were very painful and generated strong emotion as we reread them, because at the end of the day, this was a fellow individual that we were talking about, in some cases who were injured, who had lost their lives. But I still believe in seeing the glass half full, meaning that from this report, I believe that we can glean valuable insight on how to better our community and ensure that we have better police. There's a couple things. I really love the suggestions that were offered. Some of them are already somewhat in progress, but to me, it tells me we need to do a better job of educating and making sure information is trickled down. For example, we talked about a special number. There is the Office of Accountability and Transparency. You can file the complaint against law enforcement, and you can choose to do that in an anonymous matter. And you can also file that via email or by a telephone number if there are any concerns. So we definitely need to make sure we are sharing that, and I can get that to you. We also started, before the DOJ concluded their investigation, a revamping of our use of force policies. And we did that, which I really like. We did that with community feedback. It was the first time that the community had an opportunity to view the suggested language to the changes and actually weigh in on it. So that I think should be the process going forward, and how we continue to make revisions to our policies so that our community has input into this. With respect to recruiting more minority officers, one of the initiatives that the city does have in place is 30 by 2030. And that is a goal, for example, to increase the number of female officers on our police force by 2030. We want to increase it to 30%. And we're actively looking for ways to diversify the force to include, to mimic more of our actual cultural representation here in the city. So those, if you know of anybody that might be a good candidate for our force, I would encourage you to let them know that we are looking. So they should be, so they should follow up on that. And then lastly, with respect to ensuring that civilians our community have a say in this, one of the initiatives that we have is called the Civilian Review Board. Some of my colleagues tried to change it where you could not have had a claim against the city of Phoenix to serve on that board. And I made it my mission to take that out of it, because I believe that everyone should have the ability to chime in, including those who have filed a claim against the city. We only become better when we have a diversity of opinions. So, and actually the Civilian Review Board is open for applications. We are now accepting applications, and it closes on August 16th. If anyone is interested, I could drop the details. Oh, the chat is closed. Or I can get it to Dr. Hardin or to Ms. Lucas Wilson to share it with the distribution if that is the goal. Okay. Definitely want to make sure that we are informed and know what's going on. And I would ask also if you have a second to share over the recommendations. I tried to keep a little note, but I was not in front of a computer at the time, so I was just writing it down. But all of the recommendations, I would like to see them so that I can see how we can incorporate them and make them better going forward. I believe I represent the community, and and I think the only way you hear from the community is what you hear from the community is important in the way you move forward. Again, I believe I'm more of a half glass full person. So although it is, it's probably not the best thing that we wanted to happen, but sometimes just dealing with the issue is the best step forward. So I am here to figure out how we can make sure that our police and our other city resources work best for the community at large. So I welcome any feedback, and I just want to again thank the NAACP for hosting today's session. And I want to say thank you to everyone that took the time out on a Saturday afternoon to come and listen and voice their concerns. With that, I will turn it back over to you, Ms. Lucas.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much, Councilwoman. Excuse me. I have allergies, so my voice comes and goes. So thank you so much, and really appreciate your willingness to look at some of the suggestions that we put forth today, and the fact that you're willing to review them and see what you can do to move them forward speaks to the importance of having meetings like this, as much as we can. And just with the less lethal force policies, our branch was involved in those reviews, and I put forth some comments with that. And I just want to say briefly, I also get the reports on critical incidences, or become aware of them. So after the pilots that were implemented for less lethal force in about 4 precincts, even after the pilots, I'm getting less and less reports of critical incidences. And critical incidences are, people being shot when they interact with police. So there's fewer and fewer. So I just I'm saying that to point to the glass being half full. After we discuss so many needs, that it is possible to move the needle, but it takes all of us. So again, thank you for everyone for taking out the time, and thank you for hearing about our national theme of being all in, and moving forward. Kind of keep that in mind in terms of being all of our responsibilities to try to make our communities safer. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Dr. Hardin.
Great. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for your comments. And another recommendation or suggestion that came through was sending as many mental health professionals as possible on calls. So that was added to suggestions for improvements, enhancements, and like I said, a very special thank you to Councilwoman Keisha Hodge Washington, who took time from her personal time
Yes,
to join us. So
yes.
thank you so much. We appreciate it extremely well. And everyone else, and let me just recognize, I see other folks from other NAACP branches, East Valley, Michelle Rose, Shannon Hayes. Thank you very much. Hope you continue for us to be all in. Like I said, is coming out of the national convention. I cannot emphasize enough the message that we received, and the purpose of these monthly calls is for updates and information, emphasizing the need for all of us to talk to our family members, talk to other folks who maybe are feeling disenfranchised about a reason to exercise their right to vote. Help them understand what is on the table. That if we're not all in, we're going to be all out of the democratic process as we know it. So that is of urgency, that we all reach out and talk to the folks who maybe don't understand the dangers that what we're the policies that are implied in Project 2025. So with that, I would like to say thank you to everyone, and hope you enjoy the rest of your Saturday.
And also,
Yes.
please educate yourselves. I know we all have lives on Project 2025. If you have not had a chance to look at it, please do.
Yeah. All right. With that, I would say have a great afternoon, and thank you again for all of your support, everyone.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
moderator. Thank you, moderator.
Okay,
Hey,
thank
hey,
you,
thank you,
so
moderator.
thank you, Soror Keisha Hodge Washington. Thank you, Soror.
Thank you. My pleasure. You guys have a great rest of your weekend. Thank you guys again for all that you do.
All
Bye-bye.
right. Bye-bye.